So I read a study that suggested that if you want to get people in an audience on your side, you should stand in front of them and count to 10 in your head. And they'll get worried that you're nervous and get on your side before you even open your mouth. And judging from a couple of the facial expressions in here, you can see that that worked. That's what we're going to be talking about today is feeling and feeling with people. We're talking about empathy and how empathy can help you create design stronger products, conduct better discoveries, design stronger products, and just generally be a happier human being. Before we dive too deeply into this, we need to discuss the differences between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is feeling with. Empathy is feeling into. And if that sounds a little fuzzy to you, sympathy is like looking at the world's tallest and fastest roller coaster and saying, wow, that's a tall and fast roller coaster. Someone ought to ride it. Empathy is getting into the world's tallest and fastest roller coaster and actually experiencing it. Sympathy adds distance between people. Empathy is connection. Theresa Wiseman is a nurse and a researcher who identified what she called the 4 qualities of empathy. They are perspective-taking, staying out of judgment, recognizing emotion in others and communicating it, and feeling with people. Now, we're going to return to this in a few moments. For now, I just want to bring this around immediately to something that is practical. Imagine that you're meeting with a client, discussing their audience, and they just said to you, our target audience? Our target audience is everyone. Everyone in the world needs to read our content. Now, I actually had a client fairly recently say this to me. And a sympathetic response to this could be, I get that you want that, but it's not possible. Who should we target first? Whereas an empathetic response is, if you could only reach 1 or 2 audience groups, which would have the most impact. You're basically saying the same thing, but the way you packaged it is completely different. And it's going to get very, very different responses. You have to be mindful of what everyone in the room is feeling and where they're coming from. Discovery is the art of finding problems. And when we look at Theresa Wiseman's 4 qualities of empathy, what we're really seeing is a recipe for discovery. We'll take them one by one. Perspective taking. This is the most commonly associated part of this with discovery, where you're meeting with a client, you're trying to find out what it is they want to accomplish, what it is they do, why they're doing it, what laws and regulations are impacting their industry, what things they're worried about, what could be disrupting them. You're also learning about your clients on their own. Who are they? What's their boss like? Is their boss's boss completely insane? All of those things are going to come into play when you're taking a person's perspective and a client's perspective. Staying out of judgment. This is one of the more difficult ones because judging is so much fun. It's really easy when you're a web professional, designer, or developer, or any other skill set within that to get kind of annoyed because you're constantly working with clients who just don't know the stuff that you know, and yet will still ask you for things that don't make sense. It's really, really easy for that to get to you. And the perspective that I've adopted for this is that if my clients knew half of what me and my team know, they wouldn't have to hire us. So we'd all be without a job. So it's easier to keep a little bit of distance for yourself and realize that your clients need you and you need your clients. Recognizing emotion in others and communicating it. So you have a client who is asking you to accomplish something on an impossible timeline. I know, it never happens to anyone ever. Understanding where that's coming from and letting your client realize that you understand where it's coming from. That it's, they have this big meeting that's coming up, or they have that boss that's completely, off his rocker. All of those things are coming into play in your client's reality. They're living in some space that you're not stuck in, and it's going to dictate how they're going to behave within it. So recognizing it is one thing, but making sure that they know that you understand where they're coming from is a whole different level. And the last piece is feeling with people. This is the hardest part. It's not just recognizing what people are going through and letting them know it, but actually identifying those emotions within yourself and being able to have them resonate. And then you will truly understand where the people you're working with are coming from. And this isn't just clients. I'm going to talk a little bit about Phase 2, which is my employer, Phase 2 Technologies. I'm going to talk a little bit how we approach projects. And all of our project teams have developers, project managers, and analysts. And we need empathy between one another. We have developers who are, we have the overwhelming majority of our company are developers, and they're amazing. They're incredibly good at what they do. They write badass code, and they are very communicative. But at the end of the day, they want to make things. They're concerned with things like performance and making things that are new or trying out that new thing that looks awesome and is perfect for this project. Those are the kinds of things that are driving them. We have project managers who are, their job is to maintain and grow a relationship with a client. They're concerned and driven by making sure that we're doing things on budget, on timeline, and that we're growing the relationship that we have with our clients. And then we have people who are analysts, like me. In our company, this is kind of a catch-all group that includes everything from requirements gathering and discovery to information architecture and wireframing, design, analytics, testing, and we all have our own specializations within that. For my part, I spend most of my time doing requirements gathering and wireframing. We can't do anything without one another. We're working on very large projects, and not a single one of us can accomplish all of this without one another. We practice a process of design called collaborative design, or co-design. And this is where no design happens without everyone present. We have to have the analyst, the developer, the project manager in the room, because they all are bringing valuable perspective. If I were to go off and wireframe and design something on my own without the perspective of the person who actually has to build it, because everything I design is being designed for technology. If I don't have the tech person in the room, I've just wasted a ton of people's time and maybe made the problem worse. And we're all designing for a budget and for a timeline. So if we come up with the greatest solution in the world, but it's going to take 6 months and $100,000 extra, we've failed. It doesn't matter that it was brilliant. When we talk about design, we're not talking about fonts and colors and branding. We're also not talking about art. Art exists on its own, just for the sake of its own being. And our clients aren't paying us for that. No one's commissioning art from us. If discovery is the art of finding problems, design is solving them. Design is identifying a problem, figuring out how you can solve it, and if you can make it look pretty in the process, awesome. But making it look good is not job one. Solving the problem is. We also practice a process called design thinking, which involves creativity. It's mixing creativity, rationality, and of course, empathy. Now, while this talk is about empathy, empathy on its own is just feeling, a lot of it. Creativity on its own isn't going to solve anyone's problems, and rationality on its own is just going to come across real Vulcan and boring, and no one's ever going to respond well to it except for people who only respond to rationality, which is not an overwhelming percentage of the population. If we do this, if we practice design thinking and co-design, we work together well, we win. Let's talk a little bit about where the design process in web design fails. It begins with something like an information architect or going and making wireframes on their own without consulting anyone. Handing it over to a designer who goes and takes those wireframes and adds some colors, some fonts, some pictures, maybe a logo, and we call this design. We call it finished. We hand it off to a developer who goes off and builds it, and done, next. Problem is, this is not design. This is called skinning, and skinning is the designer's equivalent of being a code monkey. And while the world needs skinners and code monkeys, they don't need them at the rates that phase 2 charges. The kind of design that I want you thinking about throughout the rest of this, it can be exemplified by the Bradley timepiece, which is this. I'm calling it a timepiece and not a watch because a watch implies that you have to look at it to tell what time it is. This was designed for the blind and very cleverly designed. The face is raised and completely tactile. You'll see in the middle there is a ball bearing in a groove, and on the periphery of it there's another ball bearing in a groove. These are magnetically hooked up to the timing mechanism and are pulled around the face of the timepiece so that the blind people who wear it can tell what time it is just by touch. Up until this was designed, the only way for them to find out what time it was through a watch was to hit a button and have it squawk at you and let everyone in the room know that you were trying to find out what time it is, letting everyone know just how bored you are. The people who designed this thought through everything, including packaging it in a box that has a magnetic enclosure, so you don't need to do anything fancy to open it, and the instructions, of course, come in Braille. It required an industrial designer, a product manager, a graphic designer, a mechanical engineer, an interaction designer, and 2 additional product designers to create this. All of them working together towards that same singular goal of trying to create the most perfect timepiece for the blind that they possibly can. And they succeeded. Kickstarter thought so too. Some of you are wondering around now why I'm using a timepiece for the blind and not a website as an example of spectacular design. When I was writing this presentation, I was asking some of my coworkers for examples of brilliantly designed websites that I could use. And my boss, Mr. Jordan Hirsch, responded to me, "I've never seen a beautiful website." And while I'm not really looking to debate the merits of his statement, it did get me thinking. And I realized that I'm presenting to a room full of web professionals. And everybody in here has their own preconceived notions and strongly held opinions about what constitutes beautiful or good or effective design. And I'm not looking to debate with you about it. Let's talk about something that I think we'll all be able to agree is bad design, design without empathy. Let's talk a little bit about spider spray or spider killer. Why would somebody want to buy a device to kill spiders from a distance? Thoughts, anyone? Spot on. Arachnophobia is a large reason why people want to go off and buy a can of spray that allows them to kill a spider from a distance. Now, many people who have arachnophobia are so afraid of spiders that they can't look at a picture of a spider, let alone touch a picture of a spider. If you are arachnophobic, I'm just going to recommend you look away for a moment. You're not going to see anything too graphic, but if you are, you're forewarned. This is what spider spray looks like when you go to buy it in the grocery store. They have put on the packaging the very thing that people are completely phobic of and don't want to touch and don't want to look at and don't want to think about. And I promise you that anyone who is going into a grocery store to get spider spray, they know what they're looking for. They're going to buy it. No one has ever wandered across a can of spider spray and said, you know, maybe I'll need this someday. You buy it because you need it, because you want it. And they don't need to do this. They don't need to put the picture on the product. That's design without empathy. So we're going to do a little bit of an activity as a group. Before we get to it, I'm going to do a little bit of a recap. And then after the activity, we'll get to the real fun stuff and wrap up. Discovery is the art of finding problems. Design is solving those problems. Empathy is what we're striving for here, and getting there will require you to take the perspective of the people around you, both on your team and off your team, your users, your clients, figuring out what drives them, why they're using your product, what problems they have, staying out of judgment, remembering that everyone is human, we're all people, we've all got different circumstances that make us do things that are smart or dumb, and that we all have to find ways to work with one another. recognizing emotion in others and communicating it. Making sure that the people that you're working with know that you understand where they're coming from. And lastly, feeling with people. Allowing yourself to actually identify with the emotions you have within yourself and really truly relating to people in a personal way. And all of this requires you to actually be vulnerable and to feel. Don't be a robot. Don't strive to be. It's activity time. So I want you to turn to your neighbor and say howdy. Excellent. We're off to a real good start. Now, I'd like you to gang up in groups of 2 to 4 people, no more than 4. Terrible things happen past 4. And spend the next 4 minutes just talking about some, throwing around ideas of products, websites, things that exist in the digital or physical realm that are either designed with empathy or without it. And then at the end of this 4 minutes, we're going to have the slides are going to be on a timer. And they'll tick down as we get closer. At the end of the 4 minutes, I want you to pick a honcho for your group to bellow out your responses. And I want 1 Bradley timepiece and 1 spider spray from each group. 1 good, 1 awful. Sound good to everyone? Any questions? All right. Timer is started. Do your thing. I'm going to wander around. Sorry to the cameraman, I'm going to make your life difficult.
big finger. Yeah.
Be able to send an email directly to each.
I just saw something yesterday.
30 seconds left, everyone. Pick your bellower. Okay, time. Everyone got their stuff?
We did 3.
All right, excellent. Everyone's good? All right. Let's start with my friends on this end of the room. And remember, there will be no judgment. We are suspending judgment.
Well, we have 3 examples we choose just one. So it's about knife. A regular knife is just a regular design, but an empathy knife would be a ceramic knife that is designed for the user to always have a sharp object. So that was a sympathetic, empathetic design.
Excellent example. Please, the group in the back.
All right, so one product, I'm sorry, but we thought had very bad empathy is a particular CRM system called Blackbaud's The Razor's Edge.
I'm familiar with
That
it.
actually requires like hours of training just to figure out how to use it, and it's just it's very challenging. It's not very intuitive at all. One thing that we thought was really great was a watering can. It's very straightforward. It meets a need. It shows a lot of empathy, and it's just really good design.
Wonderful. Please.
We, for good, we went with Waze, which is an application for driving. The desired situational awareness, and of course Waze packages that crowdsourced information to a very functional product. Recently, it was acquired by Google. And for bad, we went with ParkMe, which is an application to find parking, save for the fact that even though it's crowdsourced and the information is great, the map is not dynamically refreshed based on your position. So you actually have to stop and look at the map to use it. You can't use it while you're driving.
Is that a safety feature though? Maybe they want you to look at your phone and driving.
Well, except that if you're in your car and the map's not refreshing, now you have to look at your map rather than it telling you which way to go.
Yeah. Wonderful. Please, group up front.
Well, we kind of didn't succeed in the time frame, but
You guys are having a great conversation.
we spent too much time talking. But one of the things that I liked from your idea, the Kickstarter watch. I love watching the projects on Kickstarter because I think the ones that thrive are the ones that really connect with people. I think that's really, unless there's a gimmick giveaway that connects, then taking away those, I think that Kickstarter is a great way to vet out projects that are products that are just really somehow reverberate and connect. And one of the biggest ones to date is the coolest cooler. And I think it's because you finally have a product that was designed with use in mind versus just the utilitarian storage of whatever the scenario.
I almost used the coolest in this, but the Bradley timepiece was.
No, you chose a better one.
but the coolest is it's a great example of someone who's really thought through all of the use cases and why people are using it.
Right. And another example of something that is a bad example of empathy is a lot of the campaigns to donate funds to children of third world countries. really go about it the wrong way. You almost want to turn away. You almost want to change the station. They're really going for that sympathy approach, and it really drives the opposite reaction than an empathetic approach.
I had not thought of that, but yeah. Yeah. Please.
Okay, so the product with empathy is a bicycle that includes a water filtration system on it for use in rural areas. The idea being that you have to cycle to get water, and then you can clean it using the filtration system on the bike on your way back from the well.
So as you're cycling, the bicycle is actually filtering. You're powering the filtration system to clean the water. Yeah, awesome example.
And an example of something designed without empathy is apparently the unemployment.gov website, which shouts at you to not misspell or not miss things out, not fill things out incorrectly before you started doing that. And the reason we felt it was designed without empathy is if you're on the unemployment.gov website, you're probably not feeling hot anyway and don't need to be lectured by it before you fill anything out.
I gave this talk in a Capitol camp just a few days ago in DC, and every example I got was government something or other. A lot of tax form stuff. Please, our last but not least group.
So it took us a little while to get somewhere, but one of the things that I come up with was actually a Drupal example, which is a node create form, essentially, where the marketing department has controlled the site for years and has put in all of these crazy specialty fields that only they care about, and now we're opening up the site to content editors from around the organization, and now they're trying to, just create a page, and, well, what's this code mean? What does this code mean? What is this field supposed to have in it? And they have no idea what any of this crap is. Yeah, and this, the empathy example is actually this laptop bag, which is actually a diaper bag, because diaper bags are better than laptop bags in most categories. But the features of this lovely laptop bag are side pockets, so you always can have a bottle or a pouch of food at the ready. It fits a 13-inch MacBook Air pretty easily, and like a diaper clutch if I need it. It fits my wallet, my iPad, my keys, so it has pockets for all the things I need it. And it's a backpack, and it's cute enough that I can actually bring it to work. But the backpack is actually the most important thing, because I don't know if anyone has small children and has attempted to wrangle the majority of laptop bags along with a baby, but it's not a thing that you can do. And this is great because I literally can just run around and do all the things and chase after my toddler and pick her up, and I don't even have to worry about it.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank everyone for all of these wonderful ideas. I hope the discussion was productive. Let's pick on a big company. We're going to pick on Google for a moment and talk about something that they designed without empathy. We're going to talk a bit about Gmail spam. Now, Google has a brilliant spam filter. It's pretty much the best you're going to get, especially for free. Just last week, my friend Adriana, who is a dear friend and mentor, and she is one of the most tech-savvy people I know, one of the most security-minded people I know, and yet her Gmail account was compromised by a botnet. And it sent out this spam message to everyone in her contact list. Adriana, being the brilliant and knowledgeable user that she is, very quickly figured this out and took all the steps she needed to do to remedy it. She regained control of her account, but not after the botnet was able to send out all the spam, because that happens real fast. Now, it turns out that Gmail had identified that her account was compromised and was sending out spam to everybody, and it started flagging her messages as spam, which was great. But another thing that Gmail does is that after your account has been flagged as sending out spam, it shuts you down for a 24-hour period. It does not let you send any emails at all. In Adriana's case, she very quickly figured out the problem, and the email that was sent, while not the most convincing phishing attempt ever, was pretty convincing. You know, it could have come from Adriana maybe if she was drunk. And she wanted to send an email to everyone and say, hey, you know, took care of my account. You know, you don't have to email me and let me know that it's compromised. And if you don't know that yet, just don't click on the link that was in the thing before. But she couldn't send that because Gmail shut her out of the system. There is absolutely no mechanism for a user to tell Google that they have reclaimed their system. Now, when you think about designing with empathy, when you're thinking about designing a system that is critical to a person's life, like email, which is, you know, one of the more essential web services you're going to have, you don't just have to think through the day-to-day user experience. You have to stop and ask yourself, what is the experience like on the worst day that you're using this product? And while having your account compromised by a botnet is probably like second worst thing that can happen to you, with Gmail, it's up there. And the fact that there is absolutely no mechanism for you as a user to get back to Google and say, hey, free my account, let me let everyone know that, you know, the last email they got from me is dangerous, is really short-sighted and designed without empathy. So let's talk a little bit about why this matters. I feel like we've all built kind of a rapport. I'm feeling a connection here. So I'm going to divulge a little something about myself to you. I care a lot about what I do. When I wake up in the morning and I start working, this is how I picture myself. I fight for the user. That's what drives me every day. And I want everyone else to fight for the user. I want you, no matter what website you are working on, no matter what website you are responsible for, I want everybody to realize that there is no such thing as an insignificant website. There's really no such thing as an insignificant website that has login credentials. If everyone leaves here with one thing today, I want it to be this. If you are managing a website that has a login, username, and password, you are critical to everyone's safety. Every single one of us who makes anything on the web, we are also users of things on the web. And this popular notion that you see in Hollywood of a hacker clacking away at a keyboard while being alternatively attractive and then telling someone over a phone that, you know, they're in, the doors are open, that's, you know, most of you know that's not how any of this stuff works. And that security is usually compromised through social engineering, and it's compromised from the weakest link. So if you take an example of a consumer packaged goods site, a company makes chocolate. They have a login and password because they send out coupons to their users, and they like to do a little bit of tracking and analytics. And I've had clients like this who think, well, we're just a chocolate site. Security doesn't matter to us. Nobody wants to compromise our security. We have a first name, a last name, and an email address. That's all we have. But you also have a password. And people reuse email address, those username and passwords. So if that chocolate site that we were talking about gets compromised because they have crappy security, well, let's go in with an estimate. Let's just say 20% of users for that site are reusing their username and password in multiple places. Well, now that list of compromised credentials can get into someone's Amazon account, Facebook, Gmail, government websites, health insurance, you name it. With those credentials that chocolate site is storing in an insecure manner, someone's life can be ruined. One of your users' lives can be ruined from this. And that's how security gets compromised. You don't hear about, Google was compromised, but people's Google accounts get compromised. And it doesn't happen by magic. It happens because there are website owners who are lax with security because they think they're not a target, and they are in fact the softest and best targets. Design with empathy is not just about user experience. It's about every aspect of the site build. When I say that developers and software architects or designers, I mean it. They have a stake in this too. They have a role to play. Has anyone ever heard of the 3 golden rules to ensure computer security? No one? Has anyone ever heard of a guy named Robert Morris? He was a Harvard mathematician and a cryptographer. He was a researcher for the NSA in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Most notably, he was not an NSA researcher recently. He wrote his 3 rules to ensure computer security. The first one is, do not own a computer. Do not power one on. Do not use one. Do not own a computer. Do not power it on. Do not use one. Now, you may be thinking he's telling you not to use a computer. He is, but he isn't. This is a message of survivability and not surrender. What he's saying is that we need to get more from our machines than our machines are taking from us. All too often, systems are being designed to take more from the user than they give, not securing data enough, not being mindful and empathetic to the user. All of this stuff is just going to keep getting more and more powerful. I don't think Moore's law is going to be a shock to anyone. Every 18 to 24 months, we're doubling our capacity in terms of storage and processing power. And that is leading to exponential growth in what we're able to do, which is why a new phone now is more powerful than most of the new laptops you would have had 5 years ago. We keep being able to do more and faster. And technology does not make huge leaps generally. It evolves. It's always built on the backs of what came before, just like the websites we all build for our clients, or if you're someone who owns a site, just like the site that you're overseeing. You know, things just keep evolving over time, and they're always informed by what came before it. They always grow from one another. So when you see a website that is designed without empathy now, the next iteration of it will have a little less empathy. Will have a little less, if it's designed without rationality, the next iteration, you've been on those projects where you have taken a website that you know is terrible, and you're going to do a new iteration of it or a new version, and you know that you can't actually make it good because it's not, but you can make it a little bit better. That's the kind of lag that we're talking about here. The decisions that we make now don't go away. Those lags never really get made up. Speaking of toasters and animation, we're going to talk a little bit about this concept called the uncanny valley. Anyone know what the uncanny valley is? Anyone? All right. So this is a concept that comes out of animation, and it's this idea that when you start to anthropomorphize things, they start to get cute. And then the more human you make them seem, the more creepy they become, until they look almost human, but they're not, and they're just really discomforting. And you saw this a lot, particularly in the 90s and the early 2000s with CGI, where it looked almost human. Every once in a while, you still see it now. It just makes you feel uncomfortable. Until the thing that you're looking at, the animation, actually is human looking, like actually really looks like a human being. And then you become cool with it again. That's the uncanny valley. This applies to web design in a weird way. If you think about our technology as it starts to, if you look at Facebook and Google, they're trying to get to know us on very deep levels. And in some ways, our technology knows us better than our friends do. And in some cases, our technology knows us better than we do. There's all sorts of metadata and data mining that these systems can do against us that we don't get to do. There's all sorts of logging of things that, if you get sick, there's a good chance that Google or WebMD knows before your friends or family do. They know what your symptoms are, probably in more detail than you're telling your friends and family. These search engines know what you find attractive. They know all manner of things about you that maybe your most intimate friends know. Maybe they don't. But the data is stored somewhere. It's usable. When you look at Facebook, they're trying to predict what you want Google as well. They're trying to put products in front of you. They're trying to make decisions and recommend things to you like it's a friend. And if no one can hurt you like a friend can, then what does that say for our technology and what the capabilities for it will become? Over time, this stuff isn't slowing down. It will have more data. It will have smarter algorithms. It will try to ingrain itself more in our lives every day. We're all built, many of us are building systems like that. These systems need empathy. We have a responsibility to ourselves, to everyone who's going to come after us, to actually think through creatively, rationally, and empathetically before we make design decisions. Really making sure that what we're building is sound on every possible front. Empathy is going to drive connection. It's going to drive it in person. It's going to drive it on the web. It's what we need to push forward in the right direction. My name is David Spira. It's pronounced Spira. I'm with Phase 2 Technology. We build large web systems. And I also blog at thegeekwhisperer.com. Don't be shy. Feel free to email me. You can get in touch with me through all manner of ways on the blog. You can also find me on Twitter. And I'm also happy to stick around and talk and answer questions. We have about 15 minutes for that. Thanks.
Now you have to say, let's keep over.
So, anyone have any questions, thoughts? None at all? Yeah, please.
So when did you start thinking about empathy in your design? Were you thinking this right from the jump, or was it something that you developed?
This has been an evolution, and the truth be told, when I submitted this talk, I had not really fleshed all of this out. I also didn't actually anticipate being accepted, which I think is the case with many talks. I've been thinking about all of this a lot over the years. As I've had experience, a lot of it in large corporations, some with government, some with extra government stuff, some nonprofits, and everywhere I've gone, with varying degrees, you see starkness and callousness about the thinking of it. I'm just everyone looking at their own little piece. I'm just a designer. I'm just an information architect. I'm just a developer. I'm just a site owner. And everyone is coming together and building something that is going towards a larger goal. And sometimes, you don't get that whole picture of what you're building, and you don't think through the implications of it. And, same thing with the interactions with people. I found, so often, especially earlier on before I started trying to come up with ways to improve the relationships I have with clients, sometimes it just got so ugly and icky. Things would get aggressive or just sad. You feel like you've become a waiter, just taking down, bringing it to someone and saying, "Here, this is what they want, and I know it's not going to taste good, but you should make it." And so I started trying to think about ways that I could better connect with my client, better educate them, just be a better professional at what I do. And that's where a lot of this stuff had come from, was just trying to figure out, if just being rational, which was how I approached this, I always thought, well, if I'm smart and I'm good at what I do and I produce good things, I don't need to be warm and fuzzy. I don't need to build connections because people are just I'm a technician. They're hiring me to build something. And that was faulty thinking. And the more I realized, the more I practiced building connections with people, the more I realized the way I had been trying it was dead wrong. And that urge to just go and tell someone what they wanted to do wasn't going to work for them in a blunt manner. Just a message is useless if it isn't received, and that was the big mistake that I was making. But all of this has been an evolution over many years. Please.
Have you had any work or experience deriving the results of empathic design from analytics?
So analytics are a funny thing. I'm a big fan of analytics and use them as much as possible. I'm doing a really large analytics project right now. And one of the things that like to make sure people know before we start is that analytics will tell you what people are doing, but they won't tell you why in almost every case. You know, it's just a log of this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then they left. And you can do things with like heat maps, and you can get a little bit more into the wizardry of analytics and get a better sense of what is happening, but it still won't tell you why. The empathetic angle to this, and this is what I'm doing on the other project in addition to the analytics, is outwardly talking to users. So, you know, using focus groups, using one-on-one interviews. I'm a huge fan of watching people use the things that I've designed, or using existing things that I'm going to be working on. And not just watching like over like, you know, a screen share, but actually seeing them use it in the environment in which they're actually going to use it. It's especially useful if you're doing, you know, things that are targeted towards a very specific use case. A lot of corporate systems, like if you're seeing someone's environment that they're actually working in, you may notice that they have a Post-it on their monitor that's reminding them the order with which they need to do something, or reminding them not to hit a particular button or something like that. That Post-it is a flag that says the system is failing because the person, you know, needed to create an external reminder. Those are all things that I like to look for. I like to actually watch people use it. I like to watch, and I just randomly do it sometimes, and sometimes I feel like it's a little creepy, but I just like to randomly watch how people are holding their phone. Because the way you're holding your phone and the size of your hand relative to the screen is going to, you know, show you, well, can a person reach the top of that screen? You know, depending on who you're designing for, you know, you see a lot of, you know, key utilities that get put up at the top of a phone screen. And if you watch someone use it, they're actually straining to get to it. And that's, you know, that shows that there's something not quite right. There's something that's not quite natural about it. Anyone else have any thoughts, questions? Anything I can help you out with? Questions you're dealing with? Okay. Well, I'll be around here for a few more minutes, and otherwise, I hope to interact with you outside or on the web. Thank you very much for coming.